Have you dreamed of moving abroad? Perhaps while visiting a foreign country, you were inspired by what you saw, experienced? Well, for some people, that has definitely become a reality. And for me, it's a reality that I am currently pursuing. So I want to share a little bit about my background, why I'm pursuing this, and some resources to help you get through some of the nitty-gritty details of the reality of trying to plan an international move like this. As a lifelong motorcycle enthusiast, Europe, the mountains, the scenery, the weather has always been attractive to me. I've visited a couple countries in Europe and definitely felt much more affinity for the culture and just how people interacted, the food, the flavors, like everything's just more fresh and simple, honestly, and a little more laid back. I'm somebody who stays very busy, but I don't appreciate the forced hustle culture just to have a life that you can reasonably enjoy. So many years ago, I set my eyes on eventually making a move overseas to Europe. I had a few countries in mind that were at the top of my list. Italy, because I loved it when I visited. Spain, partially because I speak a low functional level of Spanish. And Portugal, as it was recommended by a variety of people I knew, and others were not off the table as well. So I had started looking around and loosely planning a time frame. Now, due to a variety of reasons, my own personal life, where it's at, level of dissatisfaction where I currently live, the region that I live in, and certain world events, I am working on actually accelerating that timeline a little bit. Originally, I was looking more like 2030, and now it's anytime between now and then when I can get my ducks in a row. Speaking of ducks, there's several ways that you can move to Europe in particular, but wherever you're looking at going, you definitely want to research the options for getting there. Due to the types of visas that are available, I've really narrowed my search down to one country, which for me is looking like Portugal is the best fit for me and what I want and the things I enjoy doing. There's several visa options available. For myself, I'd be looking at the D8 or digital nomad visa. And eventually I would look at moving there permanently, becoming a resident, citizen when the time came. Of course, once I'm there, maybe I'll decide it's not a great fit. It's one thing to even spend some time there, but it's another thing to actually live someplace. There are several barriers that right off the bat, you know you're going to run into. Even if you have everything you need for the type of visa you're pursuing, there's going to likely be a language barrier. Unless you already speak the language, that's going to be a challenge. I actually started studying Portuguese, over a year ago. I was refreshing my Spanish around the same time. So again, this isn't something sudden or new for me. This is something I've been planning for a while. But learning the language and getting functional in the language is definitely something to consider, especially if you're a little older and trying to learn a new language. It's a little more challenging, just the time, nonetheless, the actual learning process. Once you've determined the type of visa that you will likely be moving with and the country that you're looking at moving to, from there, the details start to get more specific. For me, looking at the D8 visa, obviously steady, reliable income is going to be my primary challenge. At the moment, my current job, while it's mostly remote, is not a company that's set up for international employees. So there's that challenge. I had originally hoped to have time to build my business to a point where it was supporting me and could be relied upon. Accelerating that timeline means I will likely have to try and find a job in addition to the business. And so, of course, that's a challenge. From there, there's personal challenges. So I have pets. Thankfully, moving to Portugal, the pet requirements are pretty easy to navigate. My pets are healthy. They're at an age where moving them is not going to be too stressful. I'll have to buy a little more expensive plane tickets so we have the shortest flight available. But from where I live to there, honestly, the flights are a very reasonable time frame for my animals to be, crated or locked up. So that's a challenge I've already looked into, reviewed my options, and decided that for us, it would just be best to buy the shortest flight time frame. It's a time frame that my animals can definitely be in their crates and be okay. It would probably actually be a pretty low stress move for them, as low stress as that could be. Anyways, that's one advantage of Portugal. It's a little bit closer. I'm on the east coast of the US, so there's not a huge flight time involved there for an overseas move. If I was looking someplace further inland or Asia, then you have further challenges in that regard. So definitely something to research if you're bringing along your animals and that sort of thing. Also research what the laws are in the country you're moving to. So for example, my one dog, obviously, Cal, is a Doberman. Some countries still have certain breed restrictions, or they have restrictions around certain breeds requiring muzzles whenever in public and stuff like that. So make sure where you're moving is a good fit for things like that. Portugal's a very dog-friendly country, perhaps a little too dog-friendly from what I understand. But, that's definitely something to consider if you have fur kids. If you have actual children, human children, then the school systems and what's available for your kids. I don't have kids, so I honestly have not looked into that side of things. But that would be a massive consideration, and definitely a lot of details there that you would need to sort through and really understand what you're getting your family into. Next up is housing. So the way I'm looking at moving, where I'm looking at moving to, I will need to secure housing prior to the move, especially with my animals. For me, most likely, I will try to be working with an agent, local on that side, who can help me secure a decent house that isn't a hot mess. Being overseas, that's obviously an extra challenge. I don't have money or time to just spend months there researching and looking at places and finding a place and that sort of thing. So I will likely have to pay for a service, hire a realtor to help me locate a place. For me personally, I'm looking a little more off the beaten path. Obviously, there's large expat communities in most of the larger cities have a decent community. And that's great if you want to be in the city like that. Personally, I want to be a little more out in the country, which also means it's highly, highly important for me to learn the language. I'm more likely to be encountering language barriers daily if I don't learn the language prior to moving. So I'm spending a lot of time every day trying to learn this language that I have no previous exposure to. But off the beaten path a little more, there's more options that I feel are a better fit for me. I'm very introverted. I don't need a lot of human contact and interaction to feel satisfied. I can get most of what I need through my sport, through motorcycling, through the dog sports. And there's communities for both of that in the country. So I have a feeling I'll be able to meet people eventually and at least build a small circle. I've moved to different areas in the US where I knew nobody, and while there's not the language barrier and obviously not the culture shock, there is some cultural differences in the US. They're more subtle. It's easier, obviously, a lot easier to acclimate. But this wouldn't be my first move to an area where I know nobody. I am planning a sighting tour to narrow down the areas and regions where I want to look for housing. I will have to buy a car with the dogs, traveling to the motorcycle tracks, that sort of thing. I will definitely need a vehicle. My plan right now is to sell most of my current vehicles here in the US and purchase a European vehicle when I get there. Besides the cost of getting your vehicles overseas, trying to navigate vehicle registration, not worth the hassle. And honestly, my truck in particular is just way too big. Like, that's not designed for European roads and countrysides. So I'll definitely be looking to sell off my vehicles just before I move and then purchase a vehicle when I get there. So those are all costs and income that I have to consider when I'm planning out my budget, which brings me to my next point. So I've started a detailed, down to the nitty-gritty kind of checklist and budget planner. And at this point, it's very, very high level because obviously I'm still in the early stages of planning, but I want to understand when I'm in a position to proceed, that I am ready to rock and roll and I can go. So as I develop this budget planner, I will post this on my website, link in the description, and we'll definitely share that with you so that you have that available, and will hopefully help guide any choices or decisions on your part that you're looking to do. This planner is also designed to help me not lose sight of the small things. There's a ton of resources, and I'll share some of my favorites in the description for your higher level items, the processes and the steps you need to take from a legal perspective to make this happen. But there's a lot of little things that don't get compiled into a central source. So that is one thing I'm attempting to do with this checklist, whether it's how to move your things from the US to Europe, whether it's what to move, what's worth moving, what's not worth moving. I have pretty much decided that this move will be a serious purge for me. Depending upon what I decide to do with my house here, I may just do an estate sale and pretty much get rid of everything, with the exception of a few things that are worth packing and moving over there. Personal items will either go in a suitcase or two, and then I will likely be shipping one container overseas. So I've already priced that out at a high level. Again, prices change constantly, but at least gives me an idea of what to expect. As far as vehicles go, like I said, I don't plan on bringing any with me except for my race bike. So my race bike is closed course racetrack only. So I don't have to go through vehicle registration, that sort of thing. I just have to have proof of ownership, which I have the title, I have the non-op registration. There's a lot less sticky moving a non-street legal motorcycle that won't ever see the street. So as long as it meets the track requirements, there's no reasons to be worried about that. So that motorcycle and personal items will go in a container and be shipped. And the companies, I specifically look for companies that do door-to-door. They can hold things for a while, so I can basically pre-pack that container and then get rid of everything that's left, and wouldn't be in my final suitcase or two that's going with me on the plane. Next steps for me are my scouting trip that will be happening sometime in the next few months. I'm super excited to actually kind of go narrow down the specific areas I want to be in and give a test to my language studies, being in the actual culture. And so that's very exciting. I won't lie, a lot of this is also very scary. Like I said, it's not my first time doing something sort of similar, but this is next level. And it's just me. It's me and my animals. Silly things that people don't really talk about. I'm like, okay, I get off the plane, I've got 2 large dogs in crates and a cat. And I'm one person, and I have to navigate moving all of that through an airport. Just sometimes it's little stuff. I mean, those are little things, but they're a big thing in the moment. You know, how do I get my pets from the airport to where our new home will be? What will I be sleeping on the first few nights I'm there? Do I need to pack an air mattress? I know I plan on making a trip to IKEA and lightly furnishing a place when I first get there. So there's that. For me personally, I'm going to start with renting to make sure that I'm not in serious deep regret a couple years in. But once I'm there for a couple years, I will probably be looking at buying property. Like I said, I prefer something a little more rural. I would like to get some more chickens, garden, motorcycle business work. I mean, kind of like what I want to do here, but here the lifestyle is much more hustle and the days are long and you can't afford to just live a little easier. Growing a garden here isn't for pleasure, it's to save a few bucks. I'll obviously be sharing my journey as I go. I'll update these checklists as I go. And if you've already moved abroad, if you've made a move like this, whether you have a family, whether you did it alone, whether you're a couple, if you have some great tips for any of our viewers, please drop them in the comments. Let us know what little things made or broke the experience for you. Was there perhaps a culture shock you weren't prepared for? Were there things that you just didn't think of that caused you a lot of stress that you navigated but aren't real common topics? Any of those little tips, I will be doing my best to compile these into these checklists and create a more comprehensive list of even small things that one needs to consider. when making a move like this. It's exciting, it's scary, and it's also thrilling. So if you're up for the challenge and you're looking at moving abroad, share your story as well.